Hello, my name is Brandon Yacu, and this is my persuasive speech for fundamentals of oral communication. Here's my audience. Thank you guys for your time. I appreciate it. So, what I'm going to tell you guys about today are the stop and frisk policies in the U.S. It all started on June 10th in 1968 with a court case called Terry v. Ohio, when the stop and frisk policies first became famous. What would you do if you were a police officer observing two men making the same route to the front of a store and back around the corner to converse over and over again, about 24 times? If it were me, I know I would think they were up to no good, and that's exactly how Officer McFadden felt on that day in Cleveland, Ohio. McFadden reported that two men repeatedly went in front of the store, looked inside, and then went back around the corner to meet up with each other and talk about something. In this case, McFadden approached a gentleman, including a third person who was involved. He identified himself as a police officer and proceeded to pat down the outside of their overcoats, finding two revolvers in the men's possession. Also noted is that Officer McFadden did not search under the outerwear of the third man because he did not feel a weapon during his frisk of this person. However, what if the officer was not legally able to perform such a curse without a cause for it? Could you imagine if you were the officer and you were watching these men, knowing what they were about to do but was unable to do anything until it actually happened? The three men would have gone into the store and drawn their guns on the employees in an attempt of a robbery, which could have led to multiple fatalities and a possible escape. Thankfully, the officer was able to prevent this from happening, along with the repossession of the illegal firearms because of the stop and frisk policy. So, before we start going into detail about it, I'd like to explain exactly what stop and frisk is. By definition, stop and frisk is the practice by which a police officer initiates a stop of an individual on the street, allegedly based on reasonable suspicion of criminal activity. The goals of this policy are to provide a safer environment by preventing crime, stopping it, seizing contraband, and cleaning up reputably bad neighborhoods. The stop and frisk policy is targeted to focus on high crime areas and neighborhoods by increasing the police presence, allowing officers to evaluate and properly intervene during certain situations in such areas, gives them the opportunity to make for a safer environment. So if the stop and frisk practice has an infinite potential upside, why wouldn't we support it? The reason for this being such a controversial topic is because of the Fourth Amendment protects against random searches and seizures from police officers. But in the case of Terry v. Ohio, the court ruled that the officer had reason to believe the men were planning to commit a crime. Citizens also are against this policy because they believe officers are using racial profiling when deciding who to stop and frisk. But whether this policy violates the Fourth Amendment or not is still up to debate today, as well as whether or not stop and frisk is a form of racial profiling. The problem is that the practice is most frequently used in big cities such as New York and Chicago, where there are high populations of minorities. While this policy was at its peak controversy in 2011, 700,000 stops were made, and 84% of them were on blacks or Latino citizens. However, in 88% of these stops, the citizens were completely innocent of any crime and let go freely. That means that only about 1 in every 10 stops resulted in officers finding some sort of criminal activity. These numbers do make you ask yourself if officers are only stopping people which they have reasonable belief or that they are profiling is present. But what is important is the demographics of where the policy is being practiced. Mostly blacks and Latinos, which also make up 90% of suspects in murder cases from the area, populate these high crime areas of the city of New York. While some of these stops are certainly unjustified, many of them still end up beneficial. Stop and frisk also helps take guns, drugs, and other life-threatening weapons off the streets if not properly owned and licensed by the gun owner. Between 2003 and 2014, officers were able to seize 600 guns each year besides one of them. This means that over 6,000 illegally owned guns were confiscated off the streets of New York, saving countless lives and preventing even more crimes from happening. The benefits of this policy are infinite when being practiced properly. While the ratio of success for these stops seem to be very inefficient, with more regulation of police officers will be forced to practice their stop and frisk much more effectively and justifiably. There are multiple ways for this to happen, and the first is by properly advocating for the police through your local community, including town hall meetings or city council meetings where police budgeting is approved. Of course, this extends upon the people of the community to support candidates of city council who feel that the stop and frisk policy should be a priority in safety of the community. In addition, the next step is assuring the stop and frisk policy continues to be practiced is to approve of extended training for police officers in the area of your operation. Bring in more experts from detective agencies when training officers on the policy, along with new recruits who are just joining the department. Also, with the possibilities of today's technology, a mounted camera on every police officer will provide better supervision and evaluation of the stop and frisk practices. It will also serve as a training tool to help officers be able to depict what is considered reasonable suspicion and justifies a stop and frisk. Unfortunately, extensive training in body cameras do not come free, which circles back to you, the people of the community. Due to police departments receiving funding from their governing board, the local citizens will have to support tax increases or consider donating to their police department in order to properly fund these actions. What you can expect from these changes are much more effective uses of the practice along with a safer environment. As it goes, practice makes perfect, and I believe that with proper specific protocol and training procedures, police officers will be better able to identify reasonable suspicion when practicing stop and frisk. After a New York judge ordered a reform of the policy during 2013 for the New York Police Department, there was a decrease in the number of stops from 560,000 to 30,000, which in turn led to a higher arrest rate from 10% to 20%. Clearly, with the proper training and practice, this law is not a violation of the Fourth Amendment and can prove to be an effective way to stop crime in major cities. Although the policy is not yet perfected by law enforcement, I see it as a great opportunity to ensure safety environments and prevent as much crime as possible. With the camera capturing the officer's point of view and actions he takes, the police department will be able to properly identify what the officer did wrong and how to correct it. We see it on the news every day, especially these past few days, police officers wearing body cameras in order to fully justify their actions. These are effective not only because they document everything an officer does, but because the videos are publicly available. If an officer were to racially profile someone and want to stop them, he may think twice if he knows that his actions will be documented and under further review. While adhering to the Fourth Amendment, the stop and frisk policy should continue to be enforced in big cities and local communities in an effort to create a better nation. Fortunately, you have the ability to greatly impact the amount of safety provided in your local area just by following my proposition. Advocate, vote, donate, and increase funds. With everyone's help, we can improve the environment we live in through the local support of our law enforcement. Make sure the next time a crime is about to be committed in your neighborhood, there is the possibility of an officer being there to prevent it from ever happening. Act now. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.